Hello to my fellow curious minds. Welcome back. This is Anand here and you are watching Journey of a Curious Mind. Thank you for the support for my first video. I have taken your suggestions and improved the audio and video quality. Hope it is better now. After the feedback for my first video, I have decided that I will put a series of videos under the title Truth Behind Astrology. In this series, we will investigate astrology as a common man. From how this astrology came to life, what all we should know about astrology, what to expect from astrology and an astrologer, various myths and misconceptions around astrology, whether can we believe astrology and its predictions. Finally, astrology, is it scientific or is it just a pseudoscience? In this video, we are going to see, can we test astrology and an astrologer? So recently I was talking to a friend and I asked, how is your marriage talks going? He quickly responded, no, I won't tell. Since you are into astrology, you see my chart and tell me. This is a test. I said, okay, give me some time. Then I thought about his test and his intentions behind his test. So I asked him, this test of yours, is this test for me or test for astrology? He said, no, it is both test for you and test for astrology. Then I asked him, could you please wait till my next video is out before I take this test? He said, okay. So the question is, why did I ask him to wait to take the test? Because I found a problem in his approach to test astrology. First of all, what are we trying to test here? When I thought about it, I could think of two aspects to test in astrology, which for purpose of simplification, I identified them as T1 and T2. T1 is test for correctness and consistency of predictions in astrology. T2 is to determine whether astrology is science or just correlation. Correlation in statistics. In our case, it means when correlation generally means when X changes, Y also changes. In our case, when planet position changes, human life changes. So that human life is dependent on the position of planet. Okay. So that is T2 test, whether it is scientific or just simple correlation. And if you see, T1 is prerequisite for T2. Why I say this? Because when T1 fails, there is no necessary for us to test T2. Only if there is correctness and consistency is achieved in the predictions in astrology, then we can go for testing to determine whether it is scientific or just correlation. When we don't have the correctness and consistency in astrology, then we don't have to bother to test astrology science or correlation. Okay. Now coming to the scenarios in which we will test these two tests. In scenario 1, we will consider an astrologer who is an average astrologer. Here B is an astrologer and A is astrology. Here in this case, A is not equal to B, meaning B is an astrologer, average astrologer, and he doesn't have all the knowledge of astrology. So he cannot predict perfectly. His predictions could go wrong. Because his knowledge is dependent on his intelligence and his experience level. So since he is an average astrologer, the correctness in his predictions will not be 100%. So T1 fails here. Since I said T1 is prerequisite for T2 we don't have to execute T2 here. So T1 and T2 both fails for scenario 1. Next, let's go to scenario 2. In this scenario 2, we have a universally accessible ideal astrologer. I say universally because in this case, we are testing an astrologer, average astrologer, with a single client. In this scenario, we will consider all of the people in the world. So this astrologer can be accessed by anyone at any moment. And he is ideal because he is perfect in his predictions. He knows everything in astrology. So A is equal to B here. Okay. So coming to the clients here. So all the people in the world, I roughly categorize them into two types, X and Y. X is those who can be convinced easily. Y is of type skeptical, meaning they cannot be convinced easily. They think that astrology is more about correlation, that is statistics, and off about the mind reading techniques of astrologer. So they always think that there is something wrong in the predictions, or they don't accept because of their biased mindset. There is nothing wrong in being biased for Y, because I would say X is also biased towards astrology then. So the problem is, when we go to astrology to test astrology, we will not know whether in which category we will be falling under, whether we are skeptical or convinced easily. That is a problem that is added here in scenario 2. Even though the astrologer is ideal astrologer, now we have, when coming to the validation part, we have the type of Y person who will not accept the predictions of right predictions of the astrologer, considering it is right, considering that is the predictions are given by this ideal astrologer. Okay, so in this scenario, when we are executing this T1 and T2, we could see X agrees for correctness, but Y does not agree for correctness. So what happens? Since X agrees but Y does not agree, we lose the consistency here. Here, correctness became subjective to belief here, and hence consistency is lost. Subjective to individual belief. So hence consistency is lost. Consistency is achieved only when correctness of astrology is identified by everyone, irrespective of their individual belief. So this scenario also does not help in testing both T1 and T2, because since T1 is prerequisite for T2, even in this scenario 2, T1 fails because of consistency problem. So T2 we don't have to execute. So T1 and T2 fails again in scenario 2 also. Now, so these are the two scenarios that I could think of when we want to test astrology through an astrologer. So what can be concluded here is that astrologer can be tested individually for their knowledge in astrology, but astrology itself can never be tested through an astrologer. That won't be a true test for astrology. So next time you see an astrologer, please remember that. So how else can we test astrology? Is there any approach to it? Yes, there is. To know more on that, you need to follow me continuously. A big thanks to all the curious minds who are watching this video. If you like my work, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. And please click on bell icon to get notifications for my future videos. Post your questions and feedback in the comment section. See you on next video. Thank you and love you all. Bye.